Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Visibility Factor podcast. This is Sue Barber, your host. I'm thrilled today to bring you an amazing new author and former corporate leader, Deborah Naish, who is in my book group. And you all know that when I bring somebody from the book group, they're writing amazing books. And I'm thrilled for you to hear and learn more about her book. It's called Level Up Your Leadership. And she's going to take us through some of the really great concepts that she has in there and talk about her former career as well. So welcome to the show, Deborah. I'd love to have you introduce yourself.
Great. Thanks, Susan. I'm so happy to be here. And as you know, just going to acknowledge this is my first podcast, and thank you for being the first person who is open to having me on your program. I'm
Of
really
course.
excited about it. And my background. So I've been in the business world for over 40 years. I started out in a big corporation. I have an MBA. Northwestern. I worked at the Clorox company and the Walt Disney company, so it's a big business. Worked in a startup toy company, and I was CEO of a publishing and licensing business. And then I got into coaching in 1997 before it was even popular. And so I have been doing that for a long time and love the work that I do and feel really blessed to have the opportunity to work with amazing humans and help them get to their next level.
Love that. So do you have an ideal client or some real focus that people have when they come to work with you?
My personal clients, my one-on-one clients are generally people who are already successful and looking at how do they get to their next level, not necessarily next job, although that's often the
Mhm.
case, but are looking at who do they need to be as leaders to be able to excel at what they're doing, make a bigger impact in the world that they're in. And then I often work with their leadership teams and sometimes the teams at a level under them.
Mm,
So, and I work with leaders in Fortune 100 companies, high growth startups, and some dynamic nonprofits as well.
love that. Yes, we have some similarities then between us for sure. So let's talk about your book to start with. So tell me about how the title came to be and why you wrote this book. Who's it for?
Okay, great. It's called Level Up Your Leadership, Becoming More Conscious, Courageous, and Resilient. And it is for leaders who are really ready to be and do more than you think you can, whether you're an established and successful leader or a leader earlier in your career where you're wanting to know more about how does this all work outside of the mechanics of leadership. So it's not so much about skill sets, it's about who are we being.
Mm,
And it's for, I kind of talk about three groups of people: people who are ready to grow, like they know they are, people who are kind of feeling stretched and challenged and maybe feel overwhelmed. And the third category is like those people who are like, is there another way to lead? Like it's just not totally working right now. And this book is for you. It's also for coaches. So I believe that several of my colleagues, my peers who have read it are like, this is, they're learning a lot and be able to share it with their clients.
What's really fun is just how many great tools you're offering in there, so many great ways of looking at things and reframing them. And we're going to talk about all of those, everybody. So get ready, get your notepads out and start taking notes. And your book comes out in September. What's the exact date of the launch of your book?
September 17th. It's available if you're listening to this before that. It's available for pre-order now and wherever books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, other places. And it is launching officially on September 17th.
So exciting. That
Yeah,
is
I'm excited about
amazing.
it.
Okay, so what actually inspired you to write this book?
Oh, it was completely unexpected. I never thought I would write a book. It wasn't in my plans. It wasn't in my dreams at all. I had friends who have written books, and I was like, I'm never writing a book. I was that person. And then in the summer of 2022, I read a book called How to Begin by Michael Bungay Stainer. And he, as a result, became one of my mentor teachers. But he wrote about having a worthy goal, something that's thrilling, important, and daunting. And I started out with thinking about, well, how could I expand my business? I haven't really put so much attention on it. I've just let people kind of by referral. And I sat with that for a while and then like that wasn't it. Just didn't quite fit the criteria. And then I woke up one day in October of 22 and said, well, could I write a book? What if I wanted to write a book? What should I even think about writing a book? And so that inspiration came from the challenge of having a worthy goal and saying, if I could write a book, could I have an impact and maybe be able to change people's lives the way I can one to one, but reach a broader audience? And once I explored what could I write about, I came up with some things. And like, I got excited. There could be something here. And I've been thrilled at the reception.
Well, I've read it, everyone, and it is incredible. Every chapter, I'd go to the next chapter and think, wow, that's so cool too. I mean, there's so much in here. Uh, you talk a little bit about how a leader needs to be. And so let's
Mhm.
talk about the inner work, because I think that is a piece that not everybody considers when they become a manager of teams and leading bigger things. They don't always think about how they need to be as a person. So can you share just a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks for saying that because this piece about being versus doing is really important. And I started the book with a story and I wanted readers to have an experience of a visceral sense that you can do and be more than you think you can. And, when we're afraid or we're stuck or we're frustrated, we can actually learn how to be with our feelings in some new ways and find a way forward. And that way forward means being willing to know ourselves better and find tools that will help us. So I had done a lot of personal growth over the years, and I believe that that kind of development, that inner work, is essential to being a successful leader. It's not just about the how do we do decision making, well, how do we give feedback, well, how do we negotiate, but these other components are going to make a difference in who you show up as a leader.
Hmm.
So can I share the story that I start the book
Sure.
with a little
Yes,
bit?
of
Okay.
course. Yeah.
So I share a story about when I turned 60, I wanted to do something that pushed me past my comfort zone. And it turned out to be I climbed I still can't believe I did this, a 35-foot pole. Think about it as a 3-story high house, and then climb up rung by rung. And then I was standing on, you have to get up on top onto a skateboard sized plank and then jump off. It was freaking scary and definitely uncomfortable and outside my comfort zone. And it got to the beginning of the book because it really was more than a physical leap. It was learning about gaining a new level of internal trust that obstacles and challenges can make me stronger. And that was so I'm 67 now, that was 7 years ago. So while I would say I was playing big and I did amazing things in my career, there was something about this other domain that put me into playing a bigger game in all aspects of my life. And I believe we can all do that. And so I just trust myself more to be in uncomfortable spaces, like getting on a podcast, which is pretty outside my comfort zone, where I don't know if I can do what's needed and I just commit to go for it anyway.
I love that whole story. When I read it, I was imagining myself doing that. And I'm okay with heights in general, as long as there's like a rail. And
No
it sounds
rails,
like there's no rails. So that would scare me, I think, for sure. But
no
incredible
rails.
that you did that. That's a big, big thing to do, first of all, or even consider doing. But I love that you put it at the beginning because it kind of shows what sometimes you have to do as a leader is take a leap of faith,
Yeah,
understand and trust yourself. I love that you use trust yourself too, because to me, when I became a leader, I didn't learn all that then. I just was an individual contributor with the title.
yeah,
And it took me time to recognize that that is the important part. To being a great leader, you have to know yourself, your values, your priorities, what's important, and how you want to be seen as a leader. And that comes
yes.
with this inner work that you're talking about that I wish, somebody would have taught way back then. And I'm so glad that your book is doing that now.
Yeah. Well, it's the same kind of as I read your book and listened to your podcast, all of your in a compact period of time, 10 minutes, you give people this opportunity to learn something that they may not be aware of. And you do it like really quickly and get to the point. And it is about that inner work. So it's key. You have to have the basics. So this is a different kind of basics. I call it the
Hmm.
essentials, and talk about that in a couple of minutes. But yes, thank you for
Oh my gosh.
acknowledging that.
Yes. And Deborah has been a huge supporter of my podcast, everyone. So I just want to highlight that she's been an amazing supporter and recommending it to people everywhere. So thank you for that. I do
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that so much. So you have a leadership model in the book called Level Up Your Leadership. And how did you come up with the title for that? How did you create the model?
Yeah. So when as I said, I didn't really even think about having a book. And I haven't done my coaching in a particular framework. It's not a linear process. It's not do this, then that.
Hmm.
So once I wrote down all the things that I wanted to share with people, it kind of fell into three parts. And I was also really clear, as I said, that it's not a straight line, it's not linear. So in thinking about it, the idea of it's an infinity loop, this idea that it's going to always continue. Each part is going to touch the other, and it's not ending. It's not like you do this and you're done. It's ongoing. So I have a visual that reflects that. And the three parts are master the essentials, ask core questions, and adopt foundational practices. And I can go into more of some of them. We're going to talk about a few of those, but it's really the model itself does what I call it reflects the reality of leadership, where it's pretty fluid, it's messy, it's always evolving. We want it to be do this, then that, and in a line, but it doesn't really work out that way. And our role is just to show up consistently, practice with intention, and embrace those small shifts that add up to significant results.
And I love that you use the word practice because there is no one class you can take and have all the boxes checked of what you need to do because no one can predict situations that the business is going to face or that you have to be able to deal with your teams and other peers and management. And I think that is probably the hardest part for new managers, especially because they just want a little playbook to follow and then just know that they've got everything. And it just doesn't work that way. But in practicing, you're building your confidence and you start to trust yourself more. And then you can
Yes.
handle whatever comes to you.
It's so, so true. Like this term practice. And I think we're seeing it more. I know I'm kind of seeing it show up even more. It's that there is a playbook, but you have to really be willing to go outside the playbook, to go back to things that you thought you already did well and keep practicing them and be in that space on a regular basis. It's all about practicing.
And reflecting. I think that's the other part. I am a huge proponent of when I work with clients is slow down, think about
Yes.
this. And I don't think that is something that's encouraged in the really busy world that we're in today. That is not something that people think about. So I know you talk about that a lot in some of the different frameworks you have because you can't solve some of these things easily. You have to think about them. And you have to be able to take feedback and recognize that you may not be doing everything okay and you need to make some shifts. And that's common. I think there's this, I don't know, view of other leaders that they're doing everything perfectly and I suck and I'm not doing it well. And that's not true. They just may have had
Not
a little bit of a
usually.
time, they've had more time maybe at doing this or more experiences than you've had. So, I don't know, do you see that same type of thing where people just struggle to slow down in general?
Definitely. One of the chapters I talk about, one of the foundational practices I talk about is pause. And literally getting better at just pausing, at noticing that what's actually happening right now. And can I stop? Can I reflect? As you said, can I just pause? And I put in a number of tools around how to do that. But that's one of the biggest things, one of the first things that I generally work with my clients on is becoming more proficient at pausing.
Mhm. And it sounds so simple, right?
Well,
Okay.
that's the other thing I talk about. I love this concept that a dear friend of mine, Lou Epstein of blessed memory, talked about. It's simple, not easy.
Mhm.
So how do we there's a number of things that they do sound simple. Almost everything in my book is simple, but it's just not necessarily easy to stay consistent with it.
Right.
And that's okay. that's really okay. If you think about love, thinking about, I'm not a sports person, but I watch some basketball. If you think about Michael Jordan and dribbling. So dribbling is pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward and you can do it. But the fact that the superstars practice their dribbling and their shooting on a regular basis should tell you that even when it's easy and simple, you have to keep doing it.
Yeah, and they've been doing it for years and years and years, but
Yeah,
you're doing it with all of these people trying to take the ball away from you, so you have to get really good at it.
that too.
Yeah, for
Definitely.
sure. Okay, so you have some amazing terms that I wanted to walk through, so you can explain them and we can talk about each one. But I think there's some really fun terms that you have in here that I think everybody will start to. I feel like it gives people language to use sometimes on some concepts that are more challenging to understand. So the first one is the resistance monster. Tell me what that is.
Okay, thank you for asking about that. It's one of my favorite ones and one that's made a big difference for a lot of the people that I work with. Almost everybody uses it. So one part of my coaching practice and now kind of my broader mission is to bring more play and lightness to the intensity that we tend to face at work, or they're so intense. Do you find that with
Yes,
clients and their
for sure.
experiences? So if you could just add a little bit more, it's not quite as serious and intense as it feels in the moment. It can change things. So if you're familiar with the movie Monsters Inc., came out in
Hmm.
2001, you might have had
Yes,
kids around that time.
definitely
So
watched
I,
it.
I definitely watched that. So I had worked for Disney at a toy company, and I didn't have kids at the time it came out, but I loved this movie. It was just like super fun. And so then I had my son a couple years later. When my son was little, he was quite the resistant one. Quite often, he didn't want to leave someplace. He didn't want to go someplace. He didn't want to do that. No was a big word, even before he could actually say the word no. So, and it continued that way for quite a while. So we all have different ways that we say no to requests and ideas, and other people say no to us. So, if we just in general at the moment refer to that as a resistance, so that no is resistance in ourselves, we resist things, and other people resist us. If you can remember that there's a cuddly monster, like one of those guys in Scully in Monsters Inc., behind the big bad no, it's just not as scary and hard to deal with. And as I said, this term has helped tons of my clients, especially when they want to pull their hair out or bang their head against the wall. If they can remember that they're just up against the resistance monster in themselves or others.
Hmm.
And the key is to remember that resistance may seem like a negative, can be annoying and frustrating, but it is actually more a signal than an automatic stop sign. So it's giving you some information that there's something not working, but it doesn't automatically mean stop. And I introduced this concept really early in the book in the introduction, because even as we read, and I know, and I did this because this is how I would read things, our monkey minds dismiss things or agree with things automatically. So paying attention to when we dismiss or resist is often a key to growth. And I think we might talk about resistance a little bit more later.
Yes, we are for sure. Well, I love that and how you connected it to your past and Disney and everything. Yeah, that movie is great, and I think so many kids could connect to those characters and help them deal with fear and all these other kinds of things too, which is such a great movie.
It's
Okay,
fun.
the next one is the learning cycle.
So the learning cycle, again, is something that I put in the introduction so that as you read the book and really as you go through any process of learning that you're doing, recognize that there's a cycle to how we learn. We learn something and we practice it. There's a practice word that we talked about earlier. So we learn, we practice, we face obstacles. And it's pretty key to come up against things that stop us, that are challenging, because that's part of where the growth happens. And then we have time to reflect and then we repeat. So we're constantly in, whether it's in the same area or you kind of grow some, and it's almost like slowly expanding cycles as you keep going up the ladder, if you will, learn, practice, face obstacles, reflect, and repeat. And I introduced the concept of being a part of and joining a learning gym when you start this book and really other parts of your life, and about building new muscles that take time, patience, and continued practice to grow. And even when we get great at something, we can keep growing.
Mhm. It really feels like a big help for people in terms of, like, having a growth mindset, having
Yes.
this ability to recognize that this is a journey, that it's a long journey, and there's never an end to it, and you continue to grow and learn as long as you want to. And I think that's what people, again, are trying to find a finish line. Like, I've made it, I did it. But in my experience, that never happens. And I'm actually grateful for that because I love
Yeah.
to continue to learn. And for people who want to continue to develop, there are so many things that you can develop in and continue to grow with.
Even I'm going to bring it back to the visibility
Sure.
factor because part of it feels to me like part of that stepping into being more visible is putting ourselves in places where it's not yet comfortable. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but are willing to do it anyway. And so that's part of that learning cycle. I'm going to face obstacles, but I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. Yep. Be brave for
Mhm.
sure. Okay. The next one, spiraling reaction loop.
Okay. So spiraling reaction loop, visualize, and I have a picture of this in the book, kind of a downward spiral with an arrow. And this is about noticing the difference between when we are responding. We talk about respond as being kind of calm and thoughtful, considered, versus reacting. We're more automatic, it's impulsive. We react in the heat of the moment. So we kind of have that distinction in mind. And reactions often include things like judgment and getting angry. Things like, he has no idea what he's talking about. What's wrong with them? They can't do anything right. I can't keep working with them. Those kinds of reactions that happen. And we also have judgments about ourselves. I totally screwed up. I don't belong in this job. I can't do this and I'm never going to get it. Like those kinds of things that we tell ourselves. Any of them could be true. And it's not a bad thing to have reactions or judgments or get angry. They're really valuable. But what's important is noticing how those experiences, that reaction, impacts you and others. So, a key tool to leveling up your leadership is to notice when we make judgments, our own judgments, and when we have reactions versus whether we believe automatically that they're true. So that's one of the things that happens is that if I think, they're kind of a jerk and I've decided that that's true, and they think I'm a jerk and they've decided that's true, there's a pretty good chance we're just going to bounce off each other. So the spiraling reaction loop is I take an action and you respond to me, then you respond and I react to your response, leading to further reactions. So we're kind of reacting off of each other's reactions and we just swirl down. Does that sound familiar at
Yes.
all?
Yeah, of course. You can watch it in action and at any team meeting, right, where there's any kind of conflict or strong disagreements about the plan or, people just don't agree with what the company's doing. All kinds of situations I would imagine are similar to that.
All situations and it happens at home. Like it will happen for me with my husband or my mother. Why did you do that? What were you thinking? And then they'll come back like, what do you mean? What am I thinking?
Defensiveness, right?
We're defensive. We get in there. So when, as you mentioned, just in team meetings, if people are struggling to collaborate effectively, it could be because they're actually in a spiraling reaction loop. We're just reacting to each other's reactions. We're not taking the time to listen, to be curious, to uncover what do we agree about? What are we actually disagreeing about? More often than not, there's more things we agree about, and there's like something that we're just stuck on, but we can't get to it because we're around each other. If you take some time to do that, and I tell a story in the book about two people who had collaborated effectively for years, and then they had some miscommunications. Each of them were dealing with personal pressures, and that strained their relationship. They each made judgments. They got angry with each other. A couple times they stormed off and they stopped speaking to one another. It was pretty extreme. and they were trapped in this cycle of misinterpretation. He said one thing, she interpreted another way. She said something that prompted his reaction, and back and forth. And each of them were just quite convinced the other person was wrong. They created this breakdown, and it was their fault. I was working with this company and happened to then be brought in to help these two people clear the air and have a fresh start. And once they were open to just listening to one another, they realized there really wasn't that much that was a problem. They just kept reacting to each
Hmm.
other. So it doesn't always last. You might have to come back and do repairs again. But if you can take the time to notice you're in a reaction loop, it can make a big difference.
Wow, just imagine if everybody understood this. It's like a blind spot you can't see that
Yes.
that is what's happening. So having someone like you come in and help them kind of objectively look at each other and what they're saying helps them see the light, in a different way.
Yes. Yes. I'll also just make a quick plug for another book. Another one by Michael Bungay-Stainer is How to Work with Almost Anyone. We could put that in the show notes, but it has some great tools and practices for how to address these kinds of breakdowns.
Love that. Okay. We'll definitely add it to the show notes for sure. Okay.
Okay.
One of my favorites, the beach ball.
Had you ever heard this
I have not.
analogy?
I was so
Okay.
excited to see it though. I think it's amazing. So share that with
Okay.
everyone.
So this idea of the beach ball, you may have already heard it. It's not new. A lot of people talk about it. I first heard it like 25 years ago. And imagine there's a beach ball in the room with us and that we're sitting across the table from each other. And on one side of the beach ball, the side that you see is black. And on the side that I'm sitting, all I can see is white. And then somebody, our third person, asks us, well, what color is the beach ball? And what do you say?
I say black.
Okay. And on my side is white, I say white. So, and we're quite clear because that's what we see. Like that's the ball that we see. We cannot see the other side. There's really very little room for a different perspective. But is the ball black and white? It's both. And if you were sitting on the sides, I often describe this as think about a room where there's four people and the two people on both sides are seeing black and white, but they're seeing it also from a different way. One side sees it on the left, one person sees it on the right. So it's a shortcut way to say, hey, maybe we have some blind spots. We might be missing another perspective. And when we can notice that, not everybody in the room needs to notice it, but if we're in a room with five other people and I say, hey, Susan, I think that it might be a beach ball moment. And we're not seeing all the sides of the beach ball. And then everybody can just pause, come back to that pause, take a moment and say, okay, what am I seeing? What are you seeing? And we already know we need that. Like we advocate for teams to have different points of views, but we fight them all the time. So
Yes.
just noticing that your beliefs and what you see is different than others can help shift the conversation.
The other piece of this to me is when that's happening for everybody, you need someone to kind of stop the madness, if you will, right? Because everybody's just spinning. And if you can
Yes.
have some language and maybe the team in the beginning, if anybody sees some situations, don't be afraid to call it out, right? Because some people maybe
Right.
hesitate if it's not their meeting or something like that. So I think you have to create some psychological safety in order for that to be something that could be used. But once people know that, it could be an amazing tool to stop all the spin that's not helping and just taking up so much time. I mean, it's just wasting time and money to be in meetings where you don't get anywhere.
It is. And again, just to tie into being more visible, it can be a tool, pretty simple to introduce to a team and say, let's all be willing to call out and ask, is this a beach ball moment?
Hmm.
And you can be one of the people that makes that recognition, makes that observation. I think we might be having a beach ball moment. And it just gives people a moment to let their brain stop trying to be right, which is what we're wired for.
Yeah, 100%. I love that one. So I know everybody's going to be able to take that one and use that one. The next one is it's all information.
Okay, this is a big one. I call this one of my game changer. tools. And it's part of the second essential leadership quality. The first one about the beach ball and spiraling reaction are part of awareness, one of the essentials of leadership qualities. And uh, it's all information is about curiosity. So the premise is we can almost always be more curious than we currently are. So just kind of take that as a starting point, that there's more room to be more curious. And before I talked about responding, so respond, you're being more thoughtful, considered versus reacting when we're more automatic and impulsive. And when we notice that we do one or the other. So we're going to build on that idea. When you can view what happened and your reaction to it as giving you with information, you can shift who you're being and how other people respond to you. So I'm going to start with a personal example. So a few times a month, I have, this is a couple years ago now, but I would be visiting my mother for several hours. And it was really challenging for me to be with her, not the best relationship. And when I came home, sometimes my husband would do or say something, and I would react quite impatiently or with a snippy tone. And at that point, I had just gone what I call like above and beyond my relatively high capacity for patience. And I'd snap and I'd be annoyed with him. It took me a while, but once I got into the practice, I could look at the information for me was noticing how I reacted, realize that I wasn't reacting just to my husband's words or actions, but more to how I felt after being with my mom for a day. And I wasn't really upset with anything that my husband did or said. But I would pretty quickly be able to notice this, like more than a minute, less than an hour, that kind of time frame. And I'd use that pause again, take a breath, reset, and I'd go apologize. And the good news is over time, as I became more aware, time frame for noticing it shrunk to the point where I could stop reacting to my husband this way. And it was really a function of looking at it's all information as a reflection on what am I experiencing. So my clients often will tell me about how somebody did something in a meeting and they were like so pissed off and ready to just sort of blow up, and they could pause and they go, it's just information. And I could just then be with it and not have to act on the reaction.
What I like about that is it almost puts up like an invisible barrier to just stop. Is it okay to take
Yes.
it in? Is it something I need to worry about, or is it someone else's to worry about? I think it gives you that whole pause piece again in a way that allows people to not just immediately have a reaction.
Yes, exactly what you said. It's this space, gives you some space. So it's all information is another way to get to a pause and to get more curious. So some other places you might react are if somebody challenges or rejects your suggestion, back to resistance, you might tend to get flustered. Maybe you shut down or you get upset or you get angry and you push back and fight. If you can stop and say, it's just information, you have some different tools for how to respond to their challenge. Another time is getting feedback you weren't expecting and you're not happy about it. If that happens, Sue, what do you think? Like when people, your clients or yourself, you get feedback, what could a reaction be?
Defensiveness, or that's not true, or you don't know what you're talking about. I mean, there's a lot of immediate reaction because you're shocked in that moment that you're hearing something you didn't expect.
That's right. We could be confused, we could be shocked. And if we can, in fact, that was the first place that the concept of it's all information was introduced to me was by Tara Moore, who's the author of Playing Big. And she talks about feedback as information. And I asked her if it was okay if I used that and expanded it to it's really much broader than just about feedback. It's kind of in overall things that we might react to. If we can just see it as information, it gives us access to a different part of our brain that lets us look at it with a little more reflection as opposed to that automaticity.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. The swirl.
The swirl is my shorthand for what happens when we've been triggered, when we're in this reactive state we've been kind of talking about. And most of the time, most of us are not reactive. So it isn't like we're reactive all the time. But when we are under pressure and things are not working the way they should be, or something outside of our life is affecting our life, it's pretty normal and easy to react in ways that you might not have if you were in a calmer state. So, right, like we generally know that about ourselves. If there's something that's affecting us, our our trigger points are shorter. The fuse can do that
Hmm.
faster. So learning to notice that you reacted and jump to conclusions that are not accurate is all part of the inner work. So getting better at noticing is a key. And I tell a story in the book about Steve, who's a VP at a large corporation, who got an email from Ellen, a colleague, who said that she and her team were not going to be able to do some of the work that Steve's team needed. And he read it and he was immediately in a swirl. His self-talk was, she doesn't respect me. This is ridiculous and unacceptable. Probably all had some moments
Hmm.
like that. Pretty much all of my clients, it is one of the things we spend time on is the moments that something has got under their skin and they're kind of swirling. So an effective practice to notice when you're in the swirl is to pause again and ask, where am I? Which is, what's going on for me right now? It's like, what's the story that I have about this? What are the assumptions and judgments I'm making? What's the meaning I'm giving something? What's literally the story I'm telling myself about what happened or what's happening? So just being able, once again, to label something, in this case, the swirl, kind of like the spiraling reaction
Hmm.
or the beach ball, is what gives us the access to looking at things differently.
Love that. Yeah. And I think everybody probably has that on a weekly basis. Some email they got
I
or some kind of response to something that they weren't expecting.
And if we're depending on how well rested we are, how nourished we are, when we had vacation, our capacity for noticing that varies. And
Mhm.
so being kind and gentle with ourselves and giving ourselves some space to, it's okay. Like we're gonna get in the swirl. Just notice it. When we talk about recovery, how do we get from that space to a different place?
And doing it faster, I think, just the whole awareness piece is so important because once you start seeing all of these things happening, you can start to really nip it much faster for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, the last one on my list here, the spillover point.
Okay, it's kind of like related to the swirl, and it was my visual way to be able to say, my glass is full. And if you pour one more drop in the cup, I will spill over or tip over. And the reality is that's how we humans are. We can only handle so much. So that next pour into the glass could be another request that someone's making when you are just at beyond capacity and you've already passed your limit. Or the next probing question when you're like, we have already talked about this. Why do we have to keep going over it again? I thought we are moving on. Or somebody needs your help and you really need to finish what you're doing and you don't feel like you have the capacity. So I for a long time operated from a place of I have the capacity to take on a lot of pressure and distress, my own and others. And then there was a moment where I would say I hit my limit and that next request led to me breaking down in some way. So I might cry, I'd get foggy brain, I'd want to go to sleep. Sometimes I took it out on others, cranky, annoyed, angry. The key of using this idea of what's my spillover point is to become aware of what puts you over the edge and how to start noticing what gets you to the point that you might spill over the edge. It could be that you're more likely when you're hungry or tired or lacking exercise or you have family or other issues on your mind. So if you can notice what leads you to that point, you have a better opportunity to shift. And I have a tool that's not in the book, and I was going to offer to your
Yeah.
listeners called "Build Practices to Prevent or Deal with the Spillover." And then in the book is an invitation to get to know your spillover point.
Is
Put a link in and they can download something.
perfect. All right, we'll add it to the show notes. Well,
Okay.
I hope everybody took down all of these different terms and you can introduce them into your organizations and your teams to start helping people understand that there is a way to start to take a time out, if you will, and slow down on what is happening and not just react in everything that you're doing. I am going to pause us here for a moment, everyone, because there's so much more good stuff coming that we're going to break this episode into 2 episodes. So you're going to hear the end of this one right now, and then we're going to pick it back up on a separate episode that you're going to hear so many great new things that I have on the list to ask her about. And I kind of knew that this might happen. So we talked about maybe dividing this up into 2. So I'm going to sign off here and we'll pick it back up on a new episode. So thanks everybody for joining today on the Visibility Factor podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.